But the truth of that is, when you're acutely dying and desperate, you don't care who reads what you write. You don't care what you write. You don't think you're going to see anyone again. I grew up around certain things that were just, I guess occult is hidden, so we'll say occult, yeah.
Are there codes hidden in our everyday life that most people miss?
Yes, I would say so. I would say that generally speaking, the biggest missed code is that we are the code. You know, that's a big one. If people miss that, it doesn't matter what you absorb when you look around, because you have no access point for connectivity.
And where are these codes coming from?
The codes, I believe, exist without us knowing verbiage to describe it or really an understanding fully. But I think it's within and without, that it's one.
And how do we decipher these codes?
I think people have different methods. I think that's a good question too, because the idea of algorithms fascinates me. You know, people have their own ways of processing and assessing and going over things. And after working with children for a while, watching them, especially multiples, interact, it's really neat to see algorithms at work. So,
is there a dark force guiding this world into an end goal?
I think the dark force was one with the world from the beginning, that it's not driving anything, there's nothing new under the sun. I think that's usually put upon by people, right? That there's no living evil. It's not a person, place, or thing. It's literally something people channel and embody, but yeah.
So you say we are the code. Now, what does that mean to be a code?
Well, for a girl, it's just like this, and for a boy, it's usually like this. That's the simplest way to explain it, because we fit together like puzzle pieces from the clay. But we are the zeros and ones of the matrix. Yeah. This is good. Well, I go by a buxom pony on social media, a buxom pony. I go by misconducts on anti-social media. Misconducts, it came about when people were using my name publicly. My real name is Maga, M-A-G-A, right? When that happened, it was like, this is a big warning. Like, if other people don't know what this is connected to, I'm going to keep it chill and just kind of keep an eye on it. And that's why I adopted the misconducts and just kind of, you know, kept it in mind. What I didn't realize is later that misconducts being tagged all over everything in my project gave it another layer of validity and so much more context, because if you understand the work, it starts to build a picture. Like, they are not pieces individually that might make sense. Like a recipe, it's not about the elements separate, it's about the recipe, which is what RX is: recipe or spell or prescription. So, you know,
yeah,
I had to start making my own. I didn't like the way they were using my name.
Who was using your name?
So, Make America Great Again, the acronym, people didn't put it together at first and start saying to me things about that at first because of the periods. Because people pay attention to punctuation. I've never followed punctuation. I don't know about you. But for me, words I've played with, you know, a lot. So, you know, people would argue with me, no, that's not your name, you're seeing things, you're crazy. And I'm like, okay, wait till it comes out and it starts to be more obvious. Suddenly I started getting calls from kids I went to school with back in the day. I don't know why I was thinking about you. I said, did you see someone wearing a red hat today on the bus, like driving by at the cafe? Maybe when you were picking up your child. They'll be like, you know what, I did. Thanks for the advertising. I have to start using this free advertising for something else. What was I going to do? Just let them benefit from getting over on people, right? It was like too much for me. So I had to be creative at that point.
Do you think there was some kind of like occultic purpose behind them using MAGA?
Well, MAGA is the way they pronounce it. Make America Great Again, and call it an acronym, but it's actually Maga, right? Not an American word. And Maga is an occult word. I would say it's the root of the occult itself. It's literally the Genesis principle. So you have Maga is M-A-G, right? Female magnetism. It's also, well, it's many things in many ways that can be explained through etymology, which is the root word study, or symbology, symbols, or you can look at it from numerology even and overlap all of these things. It's really interesting, but it's definitely tied to I would say it is the occult itself. So Maga means itself in Hungarian. It's both you and hierarchical term for you and the one above you. Right? So if it's you and the one above you, that could be your maker, your mama, your immune system, right? It could be the oneness of all things and the resonance and harmony, or it can be used against you, which you would see it represented in many ways. Like, that's obvious too. Like the Magician Tarot card, which is Magi, plural, Mago, male, Maga is the feminine. But in my family's cultures, in like Spanish and Italian, it's sorceress or source. And for that to be female magnetism as we know it, and male to be electric, together we are electromagnetic. You see that it's occulting the divine feminine itself. That there's no word for that. You can call it many things. It means your heart to love. It means to birth, to seed. Rebirth also, but it can be used against you negatively, which, yeah, once it was used publicly, it was a warning to me. I knew what it was tied to. Some of the things I've known that it's tied to since I was really little. So it scared me at first to see that. I was like, people are hopefully not going to ever know what I know about my name. You know, like, I don't want that to come out publicly. But how could they be using it publicly for anything but what it means? And in the Bible, it's sorcery and pharmakia. It's a pretty big warning sign when we, the people, are associated with that.
Yeah. What's the Genesis principle?
When I said that I believe my name is tied to the occult, the Genesis principle, a great way to answer this would be if you know the Mason logo, right? Oh, if you have an awareness of the G, it's 7 in numerology. It's a spiral visually in symbology. You have the overlap of a woman's birthing, right, and the flower of life cycle. This is the Genesis principle. It means so many things. So literally, the secret of the world, you want me to tell you? Like, really? What's the Mason logo occulting? It's Genesis, not geometry, but it's both. But it's more than that. Because what is Genesis? What is a mom's secret? I'm supposed to tell you. I mean, there's another woman in the room. I could ask her. She, you know, because the thing is do you give away the secret? Of course you do. It's love. It's care. So that's what makes the difference between poisoning and ruining a child, or raising it like a flower, raising it with water and nutrients. That's the difference. So care, I would say, is the Genesis principle.
Where did you grow up as a kid?
This is really great too. Oh, this is a mouthful. So I grew up in the home of the social engineering other than LA, which is where we are now, right? But it's close by. So the Bay Area, this is like home of the social engineering. We were used as experiments early on. This is why my project is close to home and resonates with other people, because I woke up from this mass agenda and the social engineering of the Haight-Ashbury. I was a flower child. I was named Magic Flowers. It's not separate from my life, but if you understand what the Haight-Ashbury really was, other than a historical neighborhood and everything, it's highly Masonic. I went to Masonic preschool on the corner, what was it, Haight and Ash? No, not Ashbury, Haight and Masonic, on Masonic. So basically, there's that. I rode the 33 bus every day on the other. Yeah, I mean, all of San Francisco is like this. It's very integrated. So I would say mostly the Haight-Ashbury.
Are you comfortable speaking on your parents?
Yeah.
What were they like?
They're amazing. They're really eccentric and I love them. My father's an artist. You can probably tell by my quirkiness. Like, there's artists. My mom's an artist as well. But they're both from other countries. So I've always been like mostly the American of the family. Like, they all have cool cultures and speak multi-languages. And I was just like the American with like no real culture. And at the time was not multilingual or anything, and realized that I grew up with pop culture. That's what we grew up with. We were brainwashed completely. And when I realized that, I was like, wait, all the things I like, every genre, every aesthetic, every style, every cut, everything you could purchase, everything you could try on, everything, unless you made it yourself, and even then, where's the influence really come from? It's high social engineering and programming. So what did I even really like? It's like, you're so highly artistic and aesthetic, but for what, at what? There was no, it was like nonstop, and it became this void. It was like, where am I from? Like, San Francisco's roots have been blood red from the beginning.
Michael Aquino, the famous Setian. The 5th degree of initiation is Maga, M-A-G-A. That's a 5th degree of initiation in the Temple of Set, which originates out of the Church of Satan, who he was also heavily involved with early on.
So,
are you comfortable speaking on your aunt?
My aunt she's really someone that is part of this project, yes. I would say my aunt, bless her heart, she just passed. This is difficult. She argues with my father that she named me. Both of those are compliments, by the way, that they argue about this. Because I was going to be a boy, supposedly, and she said, no, Maga, it's a girl. So they argue. But the fact is, she took me aside very young and gave me my first deck of tarot cards. She sat me down. I was almost pre-verbal to any real conversation at a dinner table with adults. So maybe 6, something, 7, I don't know, maybe younger. And I'm sitting there, and I remember wearing something kind of like this, like a PJ oversized thing with a giant teddy bear. And I'm sitting there talking to her, and she's like, no, come sit with me. This little table, she pulls it out, puts it in front of me. Like this little table, actually. And she said, look at these cards with me. She went over my birthday, my name. She said things to me that blew my mind. Of course, I thought she was kidding or playing, because I'm pretty young. But the cards were beautiful, and they were very, very, very magnetic for me. I didn't realize that was my calling, the archetype of the Magi, to, reads the cards, and it's based on astrotheology, and so as above, so below. It's basically, but it's not separate from my name. But at that time, I was so young. They might have said I was magic or joking my name, like association, but I had no idea what she was referring to with this deck of cards. It seemed like a very serious adult game. So she was talking to me and said to me very specific things, which I do have to mention. because when she passed, I did not get a chance to tell her, but I almost did. So I'll tell you now. She said, when you're older, you're going to do something very specific. Your birthday is very specific. I thought she was kidding. Trust me, this is not related to my project. Only like recently did I realize like this when she passed. She just passed. So for all the people that think I've spent my whole life with this Genesis principle, Magi symbolism, no, I blocked it out. Never wanted to tell people my name symbolism. In fact, in church, I was called blasphemous for telling someone my name. Later, I found out my name means church. I was like, they're so silly. They don't know about the Mazzaroth. Like, oh well, it's okay. Forgive them, for they know not what they do. My name is not just church. It's body, temple, pineal awareness, oneness with everything. But at this time when I'm so little, she's reading to me this, just the symbols. She says, what do you see? She says, you're straight. Like, she was strangely taken back. And I was like, she's just playing with me or something. She said specifically, you're going to do something to change the world when you're older. Something with words and writing. And I said, what do you mean? Because I was starting to get nervous. It was making me suddenly uncomfortable. I didn't know what I wanted to be when I grew up. I was very young. I was not decided on that. No, not at all. She said to me very specifically, it's not a book. That's it.
Do you feel like your family has some ties to some occult or spiritual force? Or
yeah, she sorry, it made me laugh because I forgot to mention, because you asked me about my aunt and who she was. So she wasn't just... My aunt wasn't just someone that influenced me in the occult young. She was an intense character herself. Poet, activist, a wonderful woman, like, lived like a recluse, okay? And she wasn't like anyone else at all. She's very intense. I mean, one of the experiences I had with her last at a restaurant when I went to go grab something on our way out, and I said, oh, I'll just leave it. And she said, liberate the ketchup. It has a soul. I didn't know what she meant. Now, to me, food shouldn't be kept like that. And it makes sense to me. So I was like, was it really that crazy? Like, things like that. So, yeah. But she's always been deeply intellectual, and her name is Alma, and Alma Mater, I just said she passed. She was my alma mater. I didn't go to the university. Yeah. But I inherited her as my earth goddess education, if you will. Yeah. Almost via DNA, because we didn't have a close relationship. She was estranged from the family, and apparently people lately have been saying some things about her work and my work, and I'm excited because it seems I might be more connected to her in her passing than we were in our lives, because she lived as a recluse, even away from her own children. Mm. And what an interesting way to show people that you don't die when you die. That you're just not physically here, but if anything, your absence makes sense. You have a heart growth on her, and care being the generative principle. She's very much here with me now. You know, being in San Francisco, for one, there are celebrities around. I would say on a smaller scale. So I wasn't as aware, like, as in LA area, growing up somewhere like that. No one really stood out to me that I would really even care about. But yes, Robin Williams, when I met him, it was enough to stop me from speaking. I was flying alone back from Italy on a flight, and the flight attendant said to me, would you like to pass out a bag of mints? And I said, yeah. Sure. And just like, really, it's so me to like not go towards VIP and just be like, nope, turn around and walk backwards and give everyone else mints first. And who's sitting behind me? Robin Williams. Of course, I was like 8 years old, so I'm stuck on stupid, and I'm like looking at him, and I'm like, just have this look on my face, and he's like, "Do you want to sit down? You okay?" And I was just like, I was just like really floored, and he was like really nice about it. He took the bag of candies. He's like, "Thanks," and I guess he really liked candy. So that was an experience, and he just was the nicest person. Like, he spoke to me the whole flight. We got along so well. It was like an isolated moment in time, and he was someone that I'll never really forget. He asked me, "Do you want me to walk you to your parents?" I was like, "I guess so." So I was like, "Why?" Like, okay. And that became a theme with celebrities as I got older too, where this would go in a similar way, where I just didn't understand. Some of our interaction was so pleasant to them that they would like to keep in touch, and I was like, okay. But so I introduced him to my dad, and I come walking out with a grown-up. I'm holding his hand. I'm sure my dad is like, "Oh, this is so Maga." I'm like 8 years old, walking out. My dad is like, "What?" And I'm like, "Dad, it's Popeye." Like, I introduced him as Popeye. Who does that? I knew in my little girl brain that it was Mork from Ork, Nanu Nanu, because, my father and I watched that religiously. I loved Mork from Ork, but I was too obsessed with Popeye. I must have watched that movie, God, 100 times. The music, the styling, everything about it, I was obsessed with. So for me to see him in person and know that he'd been multiple characters, it was impossible for me to call him anything but Popeye. And then he tried to write his autograph as we left, and I was like, again, why? But I took this little thing, I didn't know what it was, and I brought it to show and tell. And the teacher read it, and when she read it, she read Robin Williams. And I was so confused, and when she came back, I ripped it up, the little matchbook he wrote it on, which had a little house on it. I wish I kept it. But that was funny, because I was so offended it didn't say Popeye. That's how brainwashed I was, you understand.
Yeah.
Later I realized Popeye is the archetype of the sailor, alien, and angel, which is one etymology. It's not different. So he's that archetype. Williams, I was raised on a computer my father was a graphic artist. I tested video games. Nintendo, I was the only girl really testing with this group of kids. They fed us nothing but sugar and pizza and watched us behind this glass thing in this area. It was really weird. We had so much fun, but I was like, I don't know, I was in another universe. I was like aware that this was a portal to another world. So I was raised around a lot of digital stuff, and all these digital devices here piling up around me, I like to reference, because I think it is a big reference of how my generation grew up, which is unfortunate. But yeah.
You mentioned to me before that you believed you were gender fluid. Why was
growing up I forgot to finish saying before about Robin Williams. He ended up naming his daughter Zelda. He's really into video games. And I know that because my stepmother ended up helping deliver Zelda years later. So, because he lived in, like the Mill Valley area. And so he was in the vicinity of my life growing up a lot. It's like, now that I think about it, I probably bumped into him so many times and didn't even know. But so she helped deliver Zelda, and he was big into video games and stuff. And growing up in the Castro in San Francisco, another area I lived in, that's another historical, socially engineered area, which I had no idea until much later. It's like, for all the people that loved watching the Harvey Milk movie and getting all into the rights of the Castro, to understand the social engineering ties to the same social engineering as the Haight-Ashbury and these other areas, that it is all structured, is a big deal. But the Castro district the programming that I grew up with, if you will, was so subtle, right? I went to what I now know was an elementary school in the Castro, but I didn't realize it at the time, you know? And I do have strange experiences about that school, which I can get into another time. Sure. But the fluidity, for one, let's address that term, gender fluid. For one, I was under the conditioning that that was a real thing. Let's start there. It's not a real thing. The guy that invented it is a pedophile. His last name is maybe Money, John Money. What is this guy's name? I can give you the name later and I can give you the links. But like the Kinsey data and research and foundation and they're corrupt to the core. So not only did gender fluidity creep into me as a possibility, because I was such an open person and I didn't view people based on their sex. That's how they got me, see? It was like a reverse psychology. It's like, wait, how'd you do that? But I finally understood that, yeah, the sex is something that is not just surface, body, mind. It's cellular. It's definitely coded in our coding. Genesis, if you will, is procreation, flower of life, as I said, Maga used in that kind of way. Then you have like the inverted version, which is leeching from the flower of life. And
so when did you, like, I guess, realize that you weren't gender fluid? How did that come about?
Well, about the time I started learning, because it was slow, because I still felt, even though I was mostly like a straight person, that I was still queer, because I was like, okay, that makes sense. Queer is a state of mind, maybe. You can anything even could be queer. It's a queer could be a mood. It could be like a passing thing. But there's not like anything solid there that needs to be fixed or changed, right? It's more accepting. So I started realizing that there's degrees of that. And for a straight person, I was like queer, but for my gay friends, I was definitely queer. Like, I'm maybe more queer than them growing up in the Castro and the Haight-Ashbury and so eccentric with family not from the States and all this stuff, I thought. But then it turns out I'm so much more traditional. I'm much more traditional. And that's where they start calling you, what is the term? Lefty, leftist, something. I don't know these terms. See, people think I'm political because my name's being used for that purpose. But I'm like, no, they just like my name. Politics, multiple ticks. I don't choose from them. You see? Yeah. I'm seriously saying, so I don't get involved with that. But
yeah. So so the gender fluidity, when it went out the window, when I did the research, when I realized even as an adult that I was trying to everyone's still trying to figure out things all the time. I don't think anyone stops, nor should they. I don't think they should. People that think they know, don't stop. Don't stop. Pretend you don't know. But I think when I had the awareness that there was a program that existed where this sick person came up with coined the term, then I was like, that really doesn't work for me. So growing up in the Castro was one thing, going to the gay parades and the Folsom Parade, the weird, all that stuff. It was fun until the children were dancing in the parades with them. Then it was like really hard to explain to the child that I was nannying at the time. I was like, don't look at that. I'm like covering his eyes, and I'm like, his mom is a lawyer for, what was it, Apple or something at the time. I'm like trying to cover his eyes. I'm like, no, that's totally not normal. I was like, I'm not going to say that's normal for him. Like, I refused. And that's where it was like a weird catch-22 growing up in the Castro, where I was like, I can't as a nanny say that that's normal. I'm sorry. That child shouldn't be in high heels and lipstick and receiving money in front of adults. It's really weird. I'd like to just let people know that this project came about inadvertently. It wrote itself when my name was being used publicly and I was healing from very serious trauma in my family, and breaking generational curses. It's a big one. I would say that what happened to me when I woke up from that was similar, in the sense of feeling like I survived some trickle down bad blood in the family, perhaps. Some maybe mind control, can't confirm it because I'm still looking into it. Other people ask me a lot, and they also say a lot of my artwork looks that way. But I remind them we're using devices that are aimed at serving you nothing but mind control, so chicken, egg, I don't know. Don't hate the player, hate the game. I try to use the symbolism for the right reasons. But what happened to me was similar to what's happening to the world, and it was surviving a sort of conditioning, a mindset, if you will, and belief system. And a lot of it was tied to inappropriate things. I had to learn where my inner circle was, like where it started and stopped, and I realized it's right here. This is it. It's right here. Everything starts with this circle. So, for what it's worth, the healing that I went through, it was nonlinear, and it's still going on, but it's been wonderful. And what I survived was really intense.
What did you survive?
I survived a sort of a closeness, if you will, that is taboo. So what happened to me, what I survived, I don't talk about it so much in detail, but the grooming, the social conditioning, the mind control, trafficking on a smaller scale. I'm not trying to minimalize trafficking. We have to be careful how we word this. What it is that I thought I loved this person. And I'm not saying that makes it any better. I'm saying that for me, this was something that to this day doesn't exist data. There's no long-term data on this. They don't study this. Women are supposed to benefit from being molested according to the data. Thank Kinsey for that. Kinsey is another one. Pedophile, self-mutilating pedophile that was repressed in his sexuality. But the acceptance of it was bizarre too. So these extremes were, something I had to grow up and grow out of and understand, and even realize that I can't even blame my family, because this programming is the same agenda. It's the same programming with the same footprint all over it, the same smell. This is how I know. That's how I know some of those things that people are just now getting books on and studying or using ciphers to decode. I grew up around certain things that were just, I guess occult is hidden, so we'll say occult, yeah. The awareness that I had surviving what I did growing up, it was a form of grooming and conditioning. Socially, it affected my family. I've never blamed my family for that directly, except for when I was acutely dying, which ties into more current events like the spike cycle, which I've tracked having since 2012. But the truth of that is, when you're acutely dying and desperate, you don't care who reads what you write. You don't care what you write. You don't think you're going to see anyone again. You feel differently. And a lot of this story did come from this place originally, where I was dying when my name was publicly being used for the Trump campaign. Not my name, but people were associating it with, I couldn't meet someone without them saying, "Oh my God, are you a Trump fan?" I was either that being really stoked or being really upset with me, and either one was too much for me. So I just wanted people to have some awareness about the symbolism, and I think realizing what I survived helped me not demonize my family or magic itself, especially when I revealed that we are that magic and it's really being occulted still. And my family's only been an inspiration to me. I married my we'll say the person that I was very tied to in my family, I ended up marrying his best friend. So you could see how the imprinting, right, got transferred to a sort of safer option that was similar. It was like a way of jumping out of the heat, right into the frying pan, or right out of the frying pan into the heat, or into the heat, into the frying. I'm stoned. But you see what I'm saying? You don't go from one trauma to another. But in my life, that was not even the beginning. Not even the beginning. So it was the closest person to him. And in a way, I thought would fix everything. But it ruined their relationship. They didn't speak for many years. And I think they do now. But now we don't speak that much. The way that I speak to my family and the timeline rewriting that I do, it's a oneness that they'll feel without having to speak to me or hear from me. It's like a ripple effect. And it's working. I don't know how, but it's working. I mean, I thank God. I know how. It's completely source connected. I don't have resentment. Like, I don't hold that in my heart. There's no way. This person was influential to me, like maybe the most influential person to me. I looked up to them. We act alike, we dress alike. We don't look that much alike. You look more like him than I do, but we act a lot alike. And sense of humor, a lot of the interests. And again, that goes into right back to what was I raised with and what was me? What were my influences? What did I like? Was it put upon me as some sort of programming? I had to try to assess these things. But he was very inspirational and influential in my life, right? So he's a big part of my life and of this project. My first husband I was with for less than a year.
Oh, okay.
And we did get into that for a second. And he was used to being a famous musician on the road, so there was no way that was ever going to be a thing. I knew that, which is why I married. I was like, let's do this. People are like, you don't want to do that. And I was like, why not? Slap it in the face of reality is an understatement. But I will say that because it was only 11 months, it was a quick transition. And then I met, out of all places, in the Haight-Ashbury, where I said I would never date anyone. I will not date anyone I meet in the Haight-Ashbury. That's what I said growing up. But I actually met Nala there. Nala and I were together for a long time, and he was an exceptional human being. And he helped me heal a lot, because I was like, normal? Like, there's a thing like that? Like, that's a thing? And I really sort of took on a lot from Nala, like a lot. He raised me to have the most awesome moral compass. Like, he helped me understand that raising a bar was sort of possible, but like more than that. Like this was like my partner and I now, very similarly, where we were together about the same amount of time, almost 10 years, before and after 9/11. And very close when 9/11 hit. We were there, like less than 2 miles away.
Yeah, we're going to get into that too.
Yeah.
But so who was Nala?
Nala, when I met him, I was still very young, and he was like 24. He was a tattoo artist. He was like Ed Hardy's prodigal son at the time. I didn't know what a tattoo artist was. I definitely didn't think they were cute white boys that look like so awesome. Like, I was like, aren't they like burly trucker dudes that like with like plumber crack and like, I don't know, beer in their hand? I don't know. At the time, you know, it wasn't as popular. And he was exceptionally different in my life. Yeah, we traveled the world. We went to Italy, where actually, out of all places, where my father was born. So I was like, how did we end up going there for you to teach a seminar on tattooing? Like, the place my father was born. Riccione. Like, okay. It was really, really interesting. But that happened.
Wow.
Oh, so Nala was a good friend of the person that passed. Eddie was best friends with Nala. They had been estranged from each other for years, and Nala wasn't able to attend the funeral. This was something that was hard for me, being there and knowing and loving Eddie so much. Eddie was dealing with a sort of paranoid feeling that bad things were going to happen and he was going to die and he was going to be crazy or something. And when he called me one night, I said to him, I think about this every second of every day. And so what if you are? You'll be my crazy friend. And people reminded me that some of his last photos were taken by me, but he didn't want anybody to take photos of him. So he trusted me implicitly only because, and I know this, his bond with growing up with Nala. They were one of the first families, I think, on Roosevelt Island. I think so. I hope I get that right. But anyway, they were very close. So they were estranged. I said it was an honor and an obligation to be there through this. And at the time of this memorial service, the house is filled with everyone going to the funeral services, family from out of town. I sneak in from an all-nighter and go upstairs to take a nap. In the baby's bed area, of course, right? And I'm like, no. Just need like a power nap, just real quick. And I ran down the stairs after my experience and I screamed, I just saw Eddie! And everyone turned pale as a ghost. The woman of the house, who happened to be Haitian, grabbed me by the hand and was like, in my culture, that's really the message that usually comes is to the child of the family. I was sleeping in her bed. And I'm very sensitive. So that wasn't a coincidence to her. She pulled me aside and said, tell me everything that he said or that happened. She wasn't wigged out by it. And I almost started crying because I was half asleep. Again, I feel hypnagogic, so I have no idea what is what sometimes. I was half asleep. But the message that he gave me, it was like, I was having a dream. I was deep into sleep, but I heard this knock. He's like, Maga? I heard a voice. I was like, Eddie? Everyone is looking for you. That's what I'm saying to him. And he's like, oh, Maga. And all I can see is like the overhead of sun coming through a forest and a path that's being walked. No footsteps. It's not really from his perspective. It's just like there's no him. It's oneness. It's a path being walked with sun shining through the trees. And he's like, I just got places to be. Tell everyone I'm okay. He said, except for one person, and he gave me a message for someone specific, and because I didn't know what it was. It turned out that person was a policeman, and he may have been too scared to say goodbye to him before he passed, and that's why the message came after his death, because he was too scared to reach out to him because he was paranoid. Remember, I said that he was dealing with, and that was from pharmakia, by the way. I really want to mention that it was not in his personality or a natural death, in my opinion. I want to say that I really believe, and I'm really kind of glad you asked. And I'll finish a little with the dream, but the fact that within 2 to 3 months, there was this drastic shift in him that was immediately like another person. I was terrified for him. I was terrified, but I loved him so much. So when I attended that happened, and it was like because I was close to him through Nala, I believe care being the generative principle and being in the child's bed, which is another added layer of like energetic, auric, rebirth. It was a portal of sorts. And all of a sudden, when he was speaking to me in this experience, I knew there was a reason why I was doing this, because I was like strangely compelled, and I always have been when someone dies and funerals happen. I'm strangely compelled. I thought I was going to be a nun or something growing up. When Nala painted portraits of all of his ex-girlfriends, there were like 3 significant portraits. One of them with a mohawk, one with like pigtails, and one with a nun habit. And I thought I was the one with the shaved head and mohawk because she also looked like me, or we also look alike. All of them are archetypes that look kind of similar to a degree, but he's like, no, you're the nun. Well, I was like, that's interesting. Later I find out my name is associated with it. Sometimes I wonder if he knew more about the symbolism than he let on. You know, I used to doubt that I had any paranormal experiences, but after talking with other people that don't know what a paranormal experience may even be, and I like to ask them, like, do you remember being a kid and like peeing in your bed because you thought you were in the bathroom? Because like I'm trying to simplify things and show them that that's the realm we're talking about. Like, you really thought you were there because you really, you know, there's no way you would have peed in the bed on purpose. People are like, oh yeah. So that's one way. There were a lot of, that happened so much as a child for me, where I thought not the peeing in the bed, but so that happened like once. Once I did that and I really, really realized that that was a thing, I always had ways to double check if I was awake or not. Because this became the problem for me was, am I asleep or awake? Am I asleep or awake? And I think also having a lot of the trauma occur in sleep sort of realm, that it became hypervigilance from, you know, hypervigilance was like my best friend. And there was a sort of hypnagogia, like, I feel hypnagogic. You never fully sleep again, you know. During 9/11, we were less than 2 miles away in the Lower East Side, so like 1.5 miles or something. And to be fair, I'm not going to say it was like telepathy per se. Now that we know explosives were used, I was sleeping very close to the cement ground in a non-residential storefront. So I could have picked up vibrations in the atmosphere very clearly. That may be possible. But I woke up the night before. I don't remember anything except the animals being concerned. And they slept we had, at the time, 3 hairless cats. They were one under each arm and one on top of me. And from other reports of people with pets, they tend to do that in these situations. They hold you down. They know something's going on. So I woke up with them like that, all on me in one spot, which was very strange, almost like they were protecting me. But I woke up, back to the hypnagogia thing again. I was talking like I was awake, and I was saying what was going on, and he was saying, it's a dream, go back to sleep. And I was saying, get up and get dressed. It's already happened. It's already happening. So someone rattles on the iron gate, and it's not, you know, lifted up because we're not even supposed to be in there. So we basically hear them say, come to the corner and watch the TV. That was a big warning sign for me. They knew we didn't have TV. See, at the tattoo shop, we gamed all the time. We had tons of computers. We would just drink Red Bull. Don't recommend that. That's really terrible ingredients in there, pharmacia. But at the time, a lot of gaming. And so, you know, they knew we didn't have a TV. So they said, this is a big warning sign for people too. When you hear someone say, come and watch the TV, remember that that is a choice, and that anything that's shown to you on a TV is very deliberate, even if it's supposed to look like an accident. I worked behind the scenes and on set, and Men in Black, Spider-Man, Sopranos, things like this. So you see it rain during the day, daytime during nighttime. It felt canned. And later when I worked on Men in Black too, I think I felt the same feeling as I did that day, which was this false sense of reality that was being like, yeah, right? And I'm like, no. Like something in me was like, no, but still no. And I was, you know, called names for this, and I didn't mind because I've always been kind of the weird one. Like, it's okay, you know. But, yeah, 9/11 was interesting. Casting was interesting. I mean, I wasn't like a casting director, to be clear. I was privileged enough to be at a party of people having an intimate dinner where Nala, of all people, said, anyone know of an extra job? She's looking for an extra job. It was like, yeah, someone is going to say something cool. like, I didn't expect that, but he was an adult. I was like, our age difference was, you know, I was like 17 when he was 24 or something. So there's a big age difference in this group of friends and whatnot. So I was embarrassed at the table. I was like, don't do that. I can get my own jobs. I'm not trying to get a job. I was like, no. But then when my friend, later became a friend of mine, was like, you can come be an assistant for me. And I was like, what do you do? And he was into casting, and I was like, that's weird. Because I knew I didn't want to be in that industry, so that interested me. Because I didn't want to move in an industry where there was pressure on something I wanted to do. So I was like, that's perfect. So I got into that. But there were times on set where I'd be a distraction, like, I'm a distraction, you know, I get it. And they would honk and make noise. Oh, Roxy. They had to call me Roxy because no one could say my name. So I was a distraction. And the producers would come up to me and ask me if I read copy. Do I want to read on, you know, and I didn't know what that was. And they would talk smack about me because I was really naive. I was, but it was also because I didn't want to be in that industry. So I thought they were all full of themselves and very strange. But some of them are good people. Some of them were really cool, very good people. And I had really interesting experiences working in that, yeah.
Did people in the industry try to recruit you as an actress?
Well, yeah, that was the thing was, I would say not as much when I worked there, but more so at a different point of my life. But when I worked there, it was more like people trying to recruit you to give them speaking parts. SAG is like a mark where they have a credential and a credit that they want. So even if they have money and accolades in their life and like things are great, it's like if they want to be famous, they're like trying to find a way to bribe you or like impress you. So when you walk into casting, sometimes you have to kick away all the gifts and the things in the way because you're like, wow, like so that environment I knew was this unhealthy breeding ground of manipulative power where I was like, I only used it once. I got tickets to Roxy Music. Rufus Wainwright was opening, you know, met him in the lobby, and he was dating my neighbor, which was really funny, and it was a great experience. But I felt bad after. Like, I felt like I took blood money. You know what I mean? It didn't feel right. So I was asked by two separate friends in LA that don't know each other to go on this audition 2 separate times, and both times they rejected my friends as participants, or they denied wanting to do it. I mean, or they not denied, they decided that they couldn't give them, what was it, certain sound bites. And I was known for saying inappropriate things, so I was like, okay. So the first time I let it slide, like, okay, they didn't pick you, let's go, let's just go. So we leave, and then my other girlfriend asked me to go on the same audition, and she's like, just come with me, please. And I didn't know it was the same show till we're there, and they're like, oh, it's you again. Can you just stay? We want you to do it. And I was just like, I have a huge hickey on my neck, you know, and we're supposed to be like the exes of this one girl. So on the audition, I go with the real guy I'm dating, and we're pretending we're her ex. And we can't sell it because the people at the audition can tell we're like in love. He passed, by the way. My rest in paradise, Pepe Martinez. No, one of my favorite people. Pisces power too. No, he still visits me in dreams as well, which is a trip. So you're not really gone. Again, not really gone. But and he was with my hairless cat when he visited me, and he's never met my hairless cat in that dream. So that was weird too, because I was like, well, they never met. But at this audition where we were together trying to sell it that we were an ex of this woman, they didn't believe it at all. They could tell we were totally in love, but they could only pick one person, a girl they needed. So they picked me. So I go on the show with this giant hickey that my obvious boy, like they met him. There's no denying it, okay? So it was all false pretense. There was no real date on the dating show. We met on camera. The first thing he said was, I can see Maga had fun last night. And I was like, that's what he wants to focus on. I said, if he wants to focus on that, it's all is on from here. So I wasn't very nice.
Hi. How are you? I'm Eric.
Maga, nice to meet you.
You got something on your neck.
All of like 2 seconds, and that's the first question.
Oh my god! It's noticeable, though.
It's noticeable, but it's not in question form, so I don't have it. It really was. I used my real name. I wasn't trying to act, like I was just like, I thought it was really funny, but it kind of haunted me for a bit, some of the things I said later. The character role that I was playing is very much like the character I was groomed to be. And some of those sound bites are like, it's fun to degrade boys. What else are they good for? If anyone's going to be a pervert, it's going to be me. Like, because I was a photographer, and there's a scene where they were trying to manipulate the situation, and I knew what they wanted. I wasn't going to give it to them. But we had fun in this fake date thing. But what was interesting about it was, at the time, couch surfing for like 7 months, which ties into a whole nother story. There was basically, I was staying at my friend's house that night after recording the show, who happened to be from New York, from casting. And he was an editor. And he said, "Oh, I'm so glad you're here. How weird we're in LA. Like, this is weird." He's like, "I'm doing a new show." And I'm like, "Oh, I just recorded a show today. How interesting," right? He goes, he tells me the name of the show. We realized we were talking about the same show all like for an hour. And he's like, "I'm editing your episode when I get to work on Monday." And I'm like, "I'm crashing on your couch, and I just spent all day with the people you work for, and you're going to go edit me when you get to work." And I was like, cool, he's going to take out the one scene that I didn't want in it. And I didn't even have to ask him, because like he just knew, knowing me, that it was a misrepresentation. But what are the chances of that, right? It's really interesting.
Why did you leave the movie industry?
I was never meant to be in it. It was uncomfortable for me. I've walked out of production meetings like with Barry Sonnenfeld for Men in Black, where like I was decked out wearing like a red diesel power suit, stiletto boots, red lipstick, bleach blonde hair, blue aviator glasses, and I was like super decked out. I mean, I was wearing like a skin-tight red suit, and I walk in there and I look at people and I'm like, I sit down and I really tried, okay? I tried about this long. And I got up as if I was in the wrong room, and I left, and I in the elevator was literally like, I hope I make it out of here alive. I felt like a piece of meat, like a steak. For one, okay, because I wasn't an actor. I wasn't really supposed to be there, but I was decked out, and like I felt like just a piece of eye candy. Like, really, that's the only reason why I'm here. It felt really uncomfortable, so I had to leave. I didn't like the way it felt. It was so weird. Yeah.
So you eventually started working for a strange company that ran.
Oh yeah. So it wasn't a sex website. Let's be fair. Okay, so he was known for internationally. So I kind of helped him create this, I'm not going to lie. He came to me because I had experience with computers and stuff, and he said, "Could you design an internationally based website, adult website, escort-based website, so it's not, we don't know what they're doing on these appointments, but we know they have to stick to a certain agreement, at least with us on a certain scale, and at least know there's some safety precautions or check things they do, but I wasn't involved with that. So I was only involved with designing the website, mostly telling people what to do. Let's be fair, I'm not a technical person, but it was like being admin for an adult world that I already grew up around. Not the escort, but adult industry, and that ties into, you know, my childhood in San Francisco. It wasn't in LA or New York or any of the, you know, bigger areas, but I did grow up around the adult industry. That job went on for years, and it was across from the Chrysler building. I had an office on Lexington Ave by myself for years. I'd get promotions to stay. I didn't know like the weight of what I was doing. It was more like he had a ton of websites and companies and warehouses, moving companies, driving companies. It was a lot of stuff. I just thought I was just involved with one of his projects. So, you know, he reminds me of a little Israeli Al Pacino. you know. And he flew me once to Miami to the adult convention. We stayed at, what was it, the Delano Hotel next to Puff Daddy and J-Lo, but we got to pick our room first, so we got the bigger one because I think they were trying to hide from the paparazzi when they were on the under. I did do a lot of interesting things with that company. You would think I would have been more around the adult industry in that company, but I wasn't. It was very secluded. It was very separate. I was surprised at how separate it was from everything else running. So it was enough to be compartmentalized, and I did print ads for him. I did the graphics on the website. I would speak to the people individually, whether they were dancers, models, performers, things like that. And I would just try to be the middle person, always try to communicate and mostly lean into the graphics. We stayed in contact very loosely, because I remember every time I wanted to quit, I'd get a raise, so it made it hard to do that, but it became boring. Like, I would download music on Napster all day or teach myself Flash animation, like, just to do something, right? And I would get mad at him when he wouldn't actually, like, follow through on his plans. I'd be like, what do you mean? Like, we've been working on this forever. He's like, no, I like it the way it is. I'm like, you're going to keep me here forever. So it was torture. But, so I quit working for him at one point, and Nal and I even broke up. I think I worked for him again after I was 25. Actually, he bought me, where is it? This video iPod when we reunited, and he's like, you want to do some work for me? These black video iPods, you remember these? Yeah. So archaic. I could watch movies on these. So we did reconnect when I was older, and that was when I noticed that he was less into that stuff. He was starting to get into other stuff, and it didn't work out. Not for any other reason. Like, then it was the same old routine. It was just like, there's still no reason for me to. And I was just visiting New York, so I was just like, thanks for the iPod. Yeah. The last time I checked his website recently on the archive way back, you know, I saw it was seized by Homeland Security. So, yeah.
All right. So jumping forwards many years, I guess, something started to happen in your life around 2020 that led you down a path to eventually almost dying. What started that whole process?
Well, when I was acutely dying, as I call it, over and over, and I counted 13 times in the ER in one year, I didn't know what was causing it. I knew I had a lot of health issues and had grown up trying to be cared for in the healthcare system. This is a touchy subject, but even my partners have witnessed really strange treatment from people. I think that I've been targeted since I was young through the medical system. A lot of people have. I'm not the only one. I have really horrific experiences that I've had in hospitals, and I don't really want to get into it, but if anyone ever wants to talk about that kind of thing, I talk about that kind of thing pretty openly. It's unfortunate, but I think they misuse power. And it dawned on me that a couple things went wrong in my choices with my health and things I had put in my body. I was having adverse reactions to things, including earlier flu shots. I stupidly accepted an H1N1. I was hungover. I felt like I wanted to die. That's why I was drinking. I pretty much wanted to numb out feeling, and I stupidly was picking up prescriptions, probably medicines from Walgreens. Walgreens, super satanic. Their whole logo, the W is 666. It's all embedded, dude. It's all pharmakia. They're like literally like, hey, you want a flu shot? And I'm like, yeah, what could be worse than dying? Go ahead. Like, any adverse reaction? No, it'll just make your arm red, maybe. And so they don't give people the breakdown. They don't give you the leaflet. They don't read you. You don't sign things. There's no boundary for your cellular rape that is happening. I did it to myself. Unfortunately, but I think more people now should be educated, because I don't think it should be that easily, you know, accepted that you could ruin your DNA structure literally or even eating GMO food was tied to it. The medications I was given growing up for being misdiagnosed as having some mental thing that doesn't exist unless you admit Rockefeller medicine is real, not to sell pharma, not my name definition. I can heal myself, thank you very much. Please, I'm not about to do that. It's not okay. Just saying. So I was a little upset, and I didn't know. I was acutely dying. I didn't know what I would do. So the way that it happened, where I became very ill, I dropped down 80 pounds. I was unable to eat food, and I would tell them in the emergency room, just write food intolerance, because I wouldn't let them vent me, which is why I'm alive. That I would tell them, just give me an IV, I'll be hydrated, I'll be able to eat again, and I'll be all right. And they would. And I did that almost every month, 1 year, to save my life. But then at 80 pounds, I left a year and a half before the lockdown to go see my estranged mother, who I hadn't seen in 8 years. Felt like infinity, right? 8 years is a long time not to be okay with your mom. And I blamed her for things that I don't think I ever had a right to, that even the thought of it is so hurtful. But it was programming that I broke. But I left the country at 80 pounds, unsure if I would be able to even make the flight. I knew that I had to see my family, and I was warning that we would be locked down. I was saying that there were things happening in America. I wasn't the only one that was compromised or sick, or that you might view as crazy. I've been targeted, there's many of us. And then my mom thought it was crazy for me to come back. She's like, if that's all true, because I didn't tell her all that. I simply said there are things happening. I said they're making climate refugees based on housing and fires, and tried to keep it in a way that like she could digest. But I knew it was much bigger, and I had been tracking it a long time, my whole life. My mom raised me 30 years of my life, and then asked me, how would you feel if I left? And I was like, I'm fully okay with that. I think you should. I think everyone should leave America. So I encouraged her to go. And I've always been very close and love her, even though I did have a lot of that resentment. But once I worked through it and met up with her in person, and once she said to me, how could you go back if you know what's going on? And I said to her, because Mama, you named me this for a reason. I was born in America for a reason. I don't consent to this. I know what's going on. I gotta at least, I wanted to see Derek again too. I was like, there are reasons why I gotta go back. I can't run. Wherever you go, there you are. You can't run away from something. And I really did think I was gonna die there based on my health. I even contemplated walking into the ocean. No one would have known for days. It was living in extreme terrain, like Arctic climate, in a very, I'm talking months of rainstorms and electric rainstorms, where you're really tested to your last, your very last, if you don't have a core, you will be sucked. And I've heard this from other people. If you're in another country, there are certain places the magnetism's so strong, it will consume you. You will never be able to leave there. It's like an island. It's very much like that. It's a tropic climate, but also beachy. Sand dunes in the middle of nowhere, flat. 300 maybe people in this village. You barely get Wi-Fi. Middle of nowhere. It's not where people go touristy, the elite go vacation. This is in the middle of nowhere, and it was hard to even access simple things. Go to the doctor, get food. That's when I was like, am I getting more injured here? I need to leave. And actually, I survived a near fatal fall there. It was a 9-foot fall. I almost died. So I was like, I gotta leave. That's when I told my mom, I don't mind anymore if I'm crippled, homeless, jobless, struggle every single second I'm back there. I need to leave no matter what. I was like, can I have the rest of that tea? It's like, I love it. I forgot where I was, but yeah. So I was detained there over a year and a half, and I thought maybe I'll stay. Maybe it doesn't matter, Maybe people will figure it out. I'm tired of trying to help people and everyone call me names, and it gets so tiring. So I really thought that I was at my the end of the line for me. And I even contemplated walking into the water where I was, because it was so extreme, this climate. There's Arctic climate and terrain, months of electrical rainstorms and like isolation, not speaking English for over a year and a half. It felt a lot like being on an episode of Survivor or something, or Naked and Afraid, to be more accurate, because Survivor is just not a real, you know, but it felt like that. Like, you can pick one tool to take with you. What will it be? I'm like, lighter, I smoke, so I was just like, I'll take the lighter. I'm sure smart people would take like the pan or the pot or something. But when I dealt with this culture shock of living there and feeling like I might stay, what ultimately cast me back into my path and stuff was, yeah, I didn't die. I started healing. And then my body started putting on weight too rapidly. And I had an experience where I had to go to the ER suddenly. It was in extreme pain. I thought it was kidneys or bladder or something. But after the x-rays and the doctor talked with me, he's like, no, it wasn't from losing weight too quickly. It's from putting on the weight really quickly, and your frame can't adjust, as you know. So the fourth and fifth lumbar did this, which was really painful. So that explained why I couldn't sit down or lay down. It was extremely painful. But I tried to recover from this and then realized I was trying to convince myself I was to stay in this country, have a different life. I really thought for a moment it was the way. And then I survived a 9-foot fall, and I was reminded that what I thought I was experiencing was not accurate or all there was, really, not a great assessment. So when I slipped and fell 9 feet or so and hit all the back of my body, my head on every stair going down, sliced myself open. I have scars down this. There's like a scar from here to here. This was punctured right there with metal, and I lost the ability to kind of work my hands and my knees. I fell so hard, hit every step going down, but ultimately blacked out and couldn't yell for help. And I remember trying to speak, and it was just like dead weight tongue, probably like a boxer when they get knocked out. So it was just, I was in blackness, and I was realizing, like, I thought I was dead, because I was just like, I can't go like this. It was a situation where someone was yelling at me, it's all your fault, get down here, fix this, blah, 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 blah. Chaotic energy, a storm coming, which was artificial, by the way, in my opinion. Golf ball size hail, like months at a time, electrical storms, and purple lightning storms. Like, these are all the patterns that you look for in those types of scenarios. So basically, I wasn't convinced that all my mental breakdowns and all this extreme climate and all these extreme pressure and changes were mine alone. I knew that I was under some kind of influence and conditioning to give up, if that makes sense. When I fell and I was in that pitch blackness, I thought to myself, this cannot be how I go, and not because of somebody else being that way. Like, there's no way. I don't consent to it. And I basically was like, send me back. Like, what am I doing here? And it was like this voice, not a light, and not an actual voice, but it could have been just like question answer with even me. You know, it was just like, send me back. It's not how I go. Not done. And the answer was like, well, why? Why do you deserve to? You don't. You don't know what you're doing. You're not doing anything. You want to practically die. Like, it was that kind of, and I was like, but I want to help people, and I know what's going on, and I don't consent to this. I'm not dead. This is not how I go. And I wasn't yet put back into my body and being able to speak until I said I wanted to help people, but that wasn't enough. It was when I said, by helping myself. And as soon as I was saying self, boom, I was sitting there and I was holding myself up in the bottom of this attic area in pitch black. And I was thinking, am I dead? Am I dead now? Like, are things different? Can I walk? Can I speak? And I was trying to scream for help so much, and I could barely get it out. And someone heard me and heard the table of people. And one of the people said, oh, she didn't probably fall from the top. She probably fell, tripped over the bottom. I don't know. There was like a weird moment where like I almost didn't get help. But he thought to himself, and this is a friend of the family who helped save my life, he thought to himself that it was very unusual, and he went to come see me and ended up driving me to the emergency and helped save my life. Because I was bleeding profusely, but it was coagulating so fast that they didn't want to treat me at the ER because they were convinced it was an old wound. And his speaking to them in another language and then revealing to me that the doctor was his half-sister, that they weren't going to treat me, that he was telling her, I witnessed her fall. I saw it happen, and said my sister's name, the house I was at, the things that were, he's like, I witnessed it. So they had to treat me. But it was extreme. This hand was round, really, really round, like a bowling ball, and I didn't think I would ever use it again. I couldn't close it or move it. And the puncture this way, through this like web area, is what kind of crippled my hand for a long time. And I couldn't even just close it or use this whole side of my body previously from other injuries, but it just triggered like a lot of stuff. So yeah, I basically got better from rolling a lot of joints and having my mobility and dexterity return after learning how to like grow a bunch of great weed and being like, this is the way to go, you know, component, not the smoking it, not just the rolling for the dexterity, but it was everything. You see, it was a life that I understood and agreed with because it was coded in me. And it's coded in all of us. The flower of life is the visual translation of or the seed of creation, the blueprint of life, right? And in that, it spirals. It all starts in the circle. So if you understand that my name represents that and the pattern and Genesis ability, it occults much more. And I was only just beginning to see that I was co-creating. I knew that after I was reset back into this experience, that because of the way I dealt with it, I was just gifted an element of the unknown, like something I could use to help other people. After the experience in South America, and I realized that what I had to offer may not be valuable to everyone, but offering it was valuable to me, and it wasn't going to take away from what other people would experience, because I'm not selling it, pushing it, and for me it was just handed and given, like, here you go, here's a piece, you might not want it, or a key, you don't have to turn it, but here it is. So later I realized my name was associated with holding keys and holding a torch for someone and a lamp, holding time and space. But I think what I did was, instead of focus on my family or the issues I had or the things I survived at 40 something, I knew what I was coming back to with the world being locked down. So I decided, through art and music and the symbolism they use against us, to correct the timeline, just rewrite it by creating, which is the generative principle, whatever I wanted. Write my own narrative, write my own script. I mean, that's everything that we consume, experience, feel, eat, see, wear. All this stuff's made by other people. You could make it yourself. You don't have to wait for permission. You could be your own healer, your own teacher, your own musician, your own artist. You don't need to hand a paintbrush to someone and say, here, paint my life story or picture. I mean, you can, but you can paint it yourself too. And no one can do it like you. And no one can say you're doing it wrong if they don't know what you're doing. So Maga is the feminine of Magi is plural. Maga is male, masculine. And you might know the word Magi from the three Magi, the three wise men. Magi is both a priest and a magician. A Magi, the origin of the priest and the magician and astrotheology and the sciences, they're all one. They're separate. But a Magi or a priest or magician or priest can also be a trickster or a joker or a teacher or a mother. A mother can raise or birth something into creation, to seed something, or to help it grow. But depending on what you tell a child, as you know, what you feed it, what it sees, what it feels. So what we absorb in our auric field, and corona is aura, symbolism, crown, or ring. It's our ring of our DNA and our helix and our wholeness of our cell. So if you don't have wholeness, you're allowing in your inner circle, you're going to be hacked. So it's a matter of understanding the etymologies being used against us. Maga is sorceress. My father taught me that and I learned that it could be source or sorcery, because if we are both the magician and the magic itself, or the art and the artisan is one, then it's what we make, where we come from, where our beliefs are, our core and our heart. It's not separate. So
would you say that Maga is almost like the base code where everything built from?
Yes. So if it means source or sorcery, it's basically the elements of any recipe, like RX means recipe or spell. So it's associated with that, with witchcraft. So it's whatever you put into it. It's not any element separate. Earth, wind, or fire. All of this is light vibrating, and it's all technically how you channel or focus that. Okay. So ma is to make in most cultures. Mag in Sanskrit is to move, to vibrate or raise, or so there you have the connection between water and sound. To make, meaning also connected with us in the womb, waters of creation in the Bible, but also pharmakia and sorcery. So it's a duality. It can be used against you if you're not aware of power dynamics or source. Like if I pick something up and say, well, I kind of want this, it looks good, but what's in it? Even nowadays when you read the ingredients, they're not being honest. So you have to do more than that to source something. You need to know where this was printed, what it was printed with, not just what's printed on it. They're not going to help you anymore. This is an attack on people that are not conscious. Magic and technology are indistinguishable by definition. So it's hard to take sometimes when you know creation is such a duality. But when you embrace that you are co-creating, it's not as big or, beyond you. It's just you focus on that circle. You go right back to just this space and you say, what have I put into this? What am I breathing, seeing, focusing on? And whatever's going on in the world, you don't have to focus on it. You don't have to watch a TV. You don't have to keep up to date. You don't have to watch time. Time is made up. You can make your own time. People will argue with that, but the people that make their own time will argue back that they're making a better time for themselves and for other people. I think, we are what we make, and we will achieve what we believe either way. And if you're going to be the one to be aware of this co-creation process, make it a good story, write a good story. So, thank you very much.